Welcome to Small Arms Solutions. Today we're looking at the Glock 44, their first rimfire. Now, there's been a lot of videos put out about this. There's a lot of content creators that have had these guns for a couple months, even before the release, who've had time to review them. I just received this pistol last week as a T&E, and I just got a chance to do my review. Now, I'm going to be looking at this and taking a very different approach than the previous people. I'm going to be approaching this from more of an engineering standpoint, as if something does malfunction, why, and what's the cause of it, rather than just saying it malfunctioned, it doesn't work, it's a lemon. So we're going to be taking a very different look at this than a lot of the other content creators and a lot of other reviewers. First off, we're going to discuss a little bit about 22 long rifle ammunition, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the fact that it's basically impossible to create a 22 long rifle variation of a pistol that is as reliable as a 9mm. So we're going to jump right into that. So what we're going to talk about is 22 long rifle ammunition and the differences between that versus a metallic cartridge. First off, 22 caliber rimfire is a rimfire cartridge. You have a component in the brim which causes it to get the spark so you can ignite the propellant versus a centerfire. This is a very different, and it's not nearly as reliable. That's why you will see in 22 long rifle type ammunition, you will see multiple misfires. You'll see a lot more duds than you will in metallic. You can have this happen in a couple ways. You can have an entire dead primer. You can have a certain location on the primer that's dead versus a part that's good, which is why you can put it in the pistol and then fire it, and it will be a misfire, and then you put it in again, and it'll go off because you'll have a certain part of that rim that works and it doesn't. Which this is indicative of that cartridge. We also have the issue with the projectile itself. You have a lead bullet, which is manufactured of different types of lead. You can have softer lead, you can have waxy lead, you can have different types of shapes, truncated cones, and so forth. Now, that's going into a chamber. 22 long rifle ammunition was originally designed to go into a bolt action or a lever action rifle. So you didn't have those kind of feeding issues that you do with a semi-automatic. So you have bullets that were not necessarily designed to go into a semi-automatic. So depending on the ammunition, you can have issues there as well. You have to look at design intent. The third you have is the issue with the propellant. And this is the major issue that goes on with semi-automatic weapons firing 22 long rifle ammunition. Much of the bulk pack ammunition that you see is not necessarily what you call the highest of quality control. It's not like metallic ammunition where you have a precise amount of propellant that you put in there, and that's the parameters that the pistol will work in. You have a lot of variations. Anybody who's shot a lot of 22 will notice they can have some bulk ammunition, and as they pull the trigger and they fire different rounds, you will feel in the recoil hotter and lighter charges in the propellant. And that's the inconsistency that you see. Now, that inconsistency is significant in a semi-automatic firearm because you have a certain amount of pressure that a pistol is designed to operate under. So if you have the normal pressure that's in a 22 high velocity cartridge, that's enough to operate a slide or a bolt or whatever to make the weapon reliable. You start getting a lighter charge in there, that's going to start causing problems because that's going to cause, number one, the failures to extract. Depending on the charge, it can cause you a failure to eject. It can cause you a failure to feed, because if you don't have that high enough pressure in that charge, it's not going to knock that slide or that bolt all the way back. And you will find that throughout, one bulk pack of 500 rounds, you will find ammunition that will. This is why you'll have 80% of your bulk pack of 500 will cycle without a problem, but now we have 20% that don't. When you have that 20%, with that 20% of malfunctions, depending on the amount of difference in propellant charge, will cause you a complete short stroke, which means the slide won't move at all. While you'll have the slide basically not move, you have to manually cycle everything, or you'll have one where you get enough charge so it will knock the slide back slightly, which causes the failure to extract, or you get a little bit more that'll cause it to go back so it will completely extract, but it won't completely eject. Or it'll cause an ejection without having the slide go all the way back to pick up the next round for feeding. So that variation in that charge will cause that whatever condition that might be. Now, if you look at the ammunition that we tested over 22 different types of ammunition. And what we found was mostly the problems with some of the bulk ammunition where we would have that. But you would literally feel within that magazine of 10, you would feel those different charges. So unlike a centerfire where you have X amount of pressure, you have this amount of this weight of projectile, you have all these variations that are taken care of that are consistent, and you have a jacketed bullet, which makes it so you don't have any failures to feed. You can make that, well, if you want to say Glock perfection, where we have that legendary reliability, you have that. There's sort of an analogy I want to use here, where when you look at why does a 25 auto exist? If you look at those little micro pistols, the small pistols that people carry for self-defense, if you look at a 25 auto versus a 22 long rifle, ballistically, a 22 long rifle is a better cartridge for as far as its speed, the bullet, what kind of damage that it will do. It's superior. Well, why do people carry a 25 when a 25 is inferior? Well, the reason they do it is, one, 25 auto is a centerfire. It will always go off no matter what. 22 rimfire. Two, you have a jacketed bullet, a jacketed round bullet that will consistently feed with no issues. So you have reliability. 25 auto, no, you don't. You can have variations in bullets that are slightly longer, slightly shorter. The shape will catch on a feed ramp. So the reason the 25 auto exists is because the 25 auto you can make reliable. The 22 long rifle, you go from a range of, I believe, 21 grains up to 48 grains. So trying to design any kind of a semi-automatic weapon that will function with all of them is impossible. Plus, you have the issue with the inconsistencies in ammunition. You will see ammunition is made to a much higher standard. And we certainly saw some ammunition that was made to a much higher standard, which made the pistols completely reliable with no issue whatsoever. But when you see those malfunctions and say, hey, it doesn't work because you're having this malfunction, you got to think about why that's happening. When you look at it from an engineering point, you're looking at it from the point of why is it malfunctioning? Why is it working with some rounds of the magazine and not in the other? What's that variable that's changed? And that change is in the propellant, in the charge, the way that the ammunition is manufactured. So this will happen with any semi-automatic weapon, any semi-automatic 22 long rifle caliber pistol or rifle. You can see this. You see a lot less of these types of malfunctions in rifles because it has more time to burn all the propellant so you can reach those higher pressures. In the shorter pistols, you don't have that. And in the 22 cartridges that we tested, there was only one out of this pistol that was supersonic. That was the CCI Stinger. So the numbers that you see on the boxes for the 1,000 plus feet a second, that's in a rifle length barrel, not in a 22. Every single 22 that we tested, with the exception of the Stinger, was down to a subsonic level. So you have the issue with the propellant burning. In a rifle length barrel, all the propellant burns, so you don't have as much issues with any kind of malfunctions. The pistol is different. You're burning a lot less propellant. You can feel it hit your face, for instance. You have the unburnt propellant. You put it on high-speed camera, you can see all that unburnt powder coming out of the barrel. We really have to understand how 22 long rifle ammunition works in a pistol before we're going to start looking at a pistol and saying it's not working, it's garbage, it's a lemon. There are a lot of variables that come into play, and you have to understand what each one of those are. So I hope you all are ready for a sit-in, because we're going to have us a long video, because we're going to be showing you a lot of good details. December of 2019, Glock had a big hype for a new product coming out. Now, a lot of people were expecting it to be a Gen 5 in a different caliber, or the Glock 9mm carbine. There's a lot of hype that was going up. So we were quite surprised. A lot of us were quite surprised when we found out that they were introducing the G44 as a Model 20. Now, if you also notice that G44, how many guns have come out after that? You know, the 45, 46, 47, 48. This pistol spent quite a bit of time in development versus several of the other ones, because this was a new gun. This was not their typical system. They had to do a lot more testing. So on 10 December of 2019, Glock had their unveiling of their new G44 22 caliber pistol. They did have a big opening up where they had some viewers went down to Georgia, and they went for an unveiling, and they got to take a look at the pistols and see the pistols sooner. So you got some reviews on it immediately that talked about the pistol. So Glock was to make available the pistols for sale on January 20th of 2020. That was when they were first available for sale. They had a whole bunch of pistols ready to go out, and there was a big hype on a SHOT Show on them as well. So when you look at the pistol, it was designed to be the exact same size as the Glock 19. So if you look at all of the dimensions between the two, you'll see they're the exact same. However, the biggest difference being the weight. So if you want to look at the specifications, both caliber 22, the G44 had a length of 7.28. The G19 was 7.28 inches in length. The slide length was 6.85 on both. The width was 1.26 on the G44 versus 1.34 on the G19. They both had a slide width of 1 inch. The height with magazines, they were both 5.04 inches. The weight was where it was really different. You have a 12.63 ounces on the G44 versus plus 21.52 ounces on the G19. The G19 came with a 10-shot magazine versus the 15-shot magazine on the G19. Now, most of the pistols that are coming out these days come with generally a 15-shot magazine, so that was sort of a shock to a lot that it was only 10 rounds. Now, according to Glock, they claim that the 10 rounds was the most reliable that they could get. And it also makes sense, too, because you have several occupied states out there that can only have 10 rounds. So that way, this gun right out of the box could be sold in most of these occupied states legally. Barrel length on both was 4 inches, basically. Basically, the feel was the same. Now, of course, this one here is a Gen 4. This is more of a Gen 5. So if you were to look at a Glock 19 Gen 5, it would be identical to this. This one, as you can see, is a Gen 3. It has the finger grooves and so forth. It doesn't have the four slide serrations and whatnot. But it was designed, first off, to be someone who carries the G19 as a defense gun. This was a trainer gun, a cheap trainer gun to shoot cheaper 22 caliber ammunition. And it does that very well. And this also is Glock's first introduction into the, if you want to call it, plinker market. They have a pistol that they're available for somebody who wants just to shoot inexpensive ammunition. They want to train their children. Anybody who wants to do some low cost training. Did that very, very well. So let's get into some of the details on this pistol. The rear sight was redesigned on this one to be much more precise than that of the original adjustable sight that Mr. Glock basically designed over a weekend so he could import the Glock 17 into the United States back in '85. The slide is what's truly different on this. For this assembly, we're going to do the exact same. Make sure it's empty. Safe direction, pull the trigger, pull back, release. The slide is what's truly unique on this. We have a hybrid slide. We have a combination of both polymer and steel. You can see right here, we have the steel with the polymer on top of it. The whole bottom here is manufactured of steel, which has the breech face. It has the stripping groove on here. And then we have the polymer over this. Why would they use a polymer and steel hybrid slide? The recoil of the 22 long rifle is significantly lower than that of a 9mm cartridge. So, in order to make this gun operate in a blowback properly, you could not have the weight of the Glock 19 steel slide. So by significantly reducing the weight with the polymer, it enabled you to get the weight that would equal the velocity necessary for 22 to cycle it. So that was the reasoning for it. So all your operating surfaces are steel, meaning your slide rails, your stripping groove, your breech face, your extractor, all that is steel. It's the upper weight, which is not under any stress, that's going to take, it's going to be the polymer. Again, necessary to operate the 22 long rifle caliber. We do have a embedded recoil spring as well. It's a relatively heavier recoil spring, very similar to that of the Gen 5 and Gen 4s. The barrel, as you see, is Glock's standard type of a barrel. However, it is blowback. It is a direct blowback. There's no locking mechanism on it. Now, this is a 22 long rifle barrel. It still uses Glock's marksman barrel, where you have the hammer forged barrel with the leading edges on them to give you that increased accuracy. The ramp on here is very generous for as far as its diameter, its width, that allows various types of ammunition on it. You'll see you have a groove right here. This groove right here is a loaded chamber indicator. It's relatively difficult to use because the cartridge sits so deep in there, it's hard to see. But if you have really good light or a flashlight, you would be able to see that. You'd be able to see if there's a round in there. Now looking at the frame, now for any of you who think, well, I'll just wait till they have a conversion kit out for the Glock 19, that's not going to happen. Although the frame is very similar, it is not the same as a standard Glock Gen 5 frame. It's designed specifically for the 22 caliber cartridge. Basically, because you have to have your whole ejector system in there. Also, you don't your locking block is totally different because there's no locking block because there's no lock to it. It's totally different. You do have your ambidextrous slide stop, and you also have the ability to change your grips out just like you do on the Gen 5. You have some of the larger ones. I actually didn't have a chance to change this out. Normally, I change it out to a larger grip because of my hands. You do have the beveled flared magazine well. Obviously, Gen 5, you have no finger grooves. You do have a 1913 rail in the front. Now, you can't put any accessories that you want on a Glock 19. You can put on this. You can put the sights. You can put the any kind of a tactical light laser. Anything you can do to a Glock 19, you can do to a Glock 44. That was one of the things that they wanted to be sure of. Now, for as far as an accessory. Now, the MS, this is the one area where it starts to get a little bit more expensive. Glock does offer a suppressed barrel for this one. Now, as the barrel comes, it comes with a metric thread on it. The original thread that we have on the barrel is a metric in an M9 by 0.75. Now, obviously, those of us here in the United States, we do not. We use a 1.5 by 28 thread for our standard suppressors. So what Glock does offer is a adapter that comes with the threaded barrel that will go on there to convert the barrel to a 1.5 by 28. So we drop that on like so. Then we can take a suppressor. Now the suppressor that we use during this test is the Atlas Defense model Copus. This Atlas Defense is Joe Moe. He's a former Sons of Gun guy who opened his own shop, and he really specializes in suppressors. So that's a suppressor that we use during testing. So we slide that right onto the adapter, and we're good to go. So that's what we have. Now, this barrel is over $160. This is the one area where it's sort of disappointing is the cost. For you to get into the Glock 44, you're looking at an MSRP of $430. Now, $430 is expensive. You find them in the wild, in the threes, probably around $350, which you'll get it for in the wild. However, if you want to suppress it, you're looking at over $160 for a barrel. So you're looking at close to $600 for the G40. If you compare that to any other 22 in the industry, it's relatively expensive, specifically the barrel. So I expect we're going to be seeing an aftermarket come out for these barrels, and they're going to be a lot cheaper. So it's a relatively expensive gun. It is a Glock, so you do pay a lot for the quality, and you do pay a lot for the name. So again, Glock's entering a new market. They're entering the Plinkster market. So if you look at cost, you're looking at, say you have $100 to buy ammunition. Well, $100 will buy you about 500 rounds of 9mm, and 100 rounds will buy you about 2,500 rounds of 22 long rifle. So obviously you can see the appeal to a 22 long rifle version of this pistol. So now we're going to get into our testing. Now, we did this testing very differently than we normally do. First off, we basically videoed a lot, which is why you're going to be seeing a lot of shooting footage, because we videotaped most all the ammunition that we tested, so you would be able to see our actual results. And we also utilized two pistols. The pistol you see here is what I refer to as Gun 1. This was a T&E pistol that I had gotten from Glock. Gun 2 was procured by Brandon over at the gun room in Shenandoah, Texas. It was procured by him through normal channels. So we wanted to make sure that there was no thought that a gun was handpicked for this from anybody at Glock. So we have both. We have two different guns. We had 22 different types of ammunition, which we'll get involved with. We'll let you know what all those are. And I'm going to tell you what we were looking at specifically. Now, if you look at the kind of malfunctions that you would see with this, first would be the firing out of battery incident. Now, we want to talk about firing out of battery and what causes that. What causes a gun not to fire out of battery is the slide cannot completely close, so you're leaving part of that cartridge case unsupported. That is caused by one thing and one thing only. It's caused by failure to maintain. With a 22 long rifle cartridge, you get a lot of lead vapor and wax and stuff that builds up between, in the lead of the firearm. You get a lot of fouling that comes up on the face of the chamber, as well as you can get some buildup on the slide. If you do not maintain, meaning clean, probably every 500 rounds or so, you will get a heavy lead buildup. And once you get enough lead buildup in that lead, when the slide closes, it cannot completely close and when it's trying to chamber around. And you pull the trigger, boom, that will cause firing out of battery. When the gun is clean, you will not have that issue. So firing out of battery is an operator-induced issue with a semi-automatic pistol that is direct blowback. So when we fired, we cleaned these guns. In fact, this gun was cleaned every 700 every 700 rounds or so, 500 and 700 rounds, because the point of having this gun tested for reliability is not to see how many rounds it will fire until it stops. You maintain a pistol. When you take it to the range, you shoot, you come home, you clean it, and your average shooter is not going to fire 1,000 rounds without cleaning. So there is a maintenance regimen that you have to have with a 22 because it is lead. So you do get that buildup in that area of the chamber. So misfires. What causes a misfire? Well, one would be the ammunition. You could have a completely dead primer for that rimfire round. Or, like we said previously, you can have only a partial area that's inactive. So you put it in again, it will fire. Or three, it would be the gun. Well, if you're firing a string of 500 rounds and you only have a few of those misfires, that tells you that the problem lies within the ammunition. If it was the gun, it would be basically every round if it wasn't striking far enough. So misfires is also an ammunition issue. That is a quality issue. That is something that's indicative to rimfire. Failures to feed often come from an inability for the slide to go all the way to the rear due to an underpowered cartridge. Normal power cartridge, you don't have an issue. So when the slide comes back, if it does pick up the cartridge, it doesn't have enough momentum to fully drag it into the chamber, or it doesn't go back far enough to pick the cartridge up. So if you notice you fire, say, a Stinger versus a bulk pack, you'll see like a Stinger works all the time because it gives it more than enough momentum to work the mechanism. Where you get something lower powered, it causes that problem. And that can happen with the same ammunition in the same box, not having a consistent charge. Now I want to address the issue of cracked slides. Now, this is something that we did not see during our testing, and there's only been a few of them. I really don't have an answer for that other than there's an issue with the polymer that was used in those particular guns. But I do know quite a few of these guns are out there, and there's been relatively few instances of that. Failures to extract and eject. You're firing a magazine of ammunition and you get your first few cycle perfectly, then you get a failure to extract or eject. Now my guess is you're going to feel that the recoil on that round was lighter than what you were shooting in the round before. Again, you have an issue with a cartridge that was not given enough propellant. Again, ammunition out of the same box. The slide doesn't have the energy to go all the way back. So you have that inconsistency in the ammunition causing the failures to extract and eject. Now, depending on the pistol, the way it was designed, that will determine exactly how much energy you have to make the pistol work. And I can tell you from our testing that this pistol works very good with pretty much every type of ammunition as long as the ammunition is quality and you don't have all those variables in under pressured ammunition. As previously stated, we tested 21 different types of ammunition. Now, when you look at the boxes give you a velocity that is done through a rifle barrel. So, quite frankly, that's useless to somebody who's shooting a pistol. So what we did was we're going to give you the actual velocities of this ammunition out of this pistol. So basically we took our lab radar and we did a 3-round string of each of these types of ammunition to see what the actual velocities were. So starting with the CCI Stinger. The CCI Stinger was a 32 grain copper-plated hollow point projectile with a velocity of 1,153 foot a second. This was the only supersonic round that we had. So then we did the CCI Mini Mag, which was probably the most reliable one that we had consistently. We had no malfunctions, period, out of over 600 rounds. It was 931 feet per second. We had the Remington Thunderbolt, which we did an extensive amount of 500 plus rounds, and that was 884 feet per second. The Remington Subsonic was the lowest velocity we had of every round that we fired, with a velocity of 718 feet per second. This one had consistent failures to extract, eject. This one was one that would not be suitable for this gun unless it was suppressed. Winchester M22, 834 feet per second. American Eagle 40 grain, 994 feet per second. Winchester, this was their super speed, or their hypervelocity, 1,043 feet per second. It was somewhat close to the Stinger, but it was still subsonic. Then we had the Remington Golden Bullet at 903 feet per second. This was one that's been reported by several as being unreliable, which we didn't see that at all. Federal 40 grain lead round nose, 880 feet per second. Now this one gave us a lot of failures to lock, if I do recall. Aguila 40 grain, 923 feet per second. We had CCI Velociter, 1,044 feet per second. Winchester PowerPoint, 964 feet per second. Remington Target, 913 feet per second. Gemtech Subsonic, 858 feet per second. Winchester Super Speed, 1,035 feet per second. Federal Champion Match, 979 feet per second. Winchester Western. This was one that many people had reported having issues with 1,020 feet per second. CCI 40 grain lead round nose, 942 feet per second. CCI Quiet, 748. Now we had a box of 50 of these, and I do recall half worked and half didn't. You had to have a suppressor on to make this ammunition cycle in the gun. And the Remington Viper, 1,019 feet per second. So those are the velocities that you see. Now, every one of these, with the exception of the CCI Stinger, was subsonic in a pistol. Now, all of these, with the exception of probably a very few, if you were to look at the boxes, you would see a well over 1,000 feet per second out of all those. And pretty much all of these would be supersonic in a rifle. But as we previously stated, when you have a short pistol barrel like this, the powder does not have time to burn, which causes a lot of issues with reliability. Now, as previously we stated, we had two pistols. We had what I call Gun 1, which is the one you see here, serial number ADU G144, and Gun 2 is from Brandon over at the Gun Room in Shenandoah, serial number AEBN978. And that was Gun 2. So we have one that came from Glock as a T&E and one that was bought through normal Janes. You're going to be seeing a lot of footage coming up right now of various types of ammunition that we tested. If we had a significant amount of the ammunition, we had 5 magazines, so that way you would be able to see the reliability of 5 magazines straight. So if there was a malfunction, that you would see it. And if we didn't have it, you'll see maybe 2 magazines, whatever we had enough ammunition for. We give you as many magazines in a string as possible so you can see the reliability, so there'll be no question in what you're seeing for as far as the reliability of the gun. Because the reality is, we did not see the malfunctions as many of these other content creators have. We did not see it. 50 rounds of American Eagle. This is 50 rounds of the Mini Mag Hollow Point. Got 5 magazines. We have Remington Thunderbolt here, bulk pack. Got what appears to be a light strike. We'll try that one again. The ammunition feels very inconsistent in recoil. we're going to try that one with a light strike again.
All right, this will be 70 rounds of the Winchester Western 36 grain plated hollow point bulk pack.
"50 rounds of M22. We're going to try some of the Remington 22 Vipers. These have a rather sharp, truncated cone, so this could be very challenging for a semi-automatic pistol, but we're going to see how the Glock 44 does. We have Gemtech subsonic ammunition. We got Federal Target subsonic 40 grain lead bullet.
All right, so we've got 40 rounds of the Aguila Super Extra 40 grain plated round nose.
CCI subsonic, Glock 44 suppressed.
Remington 22 target, standard velocity, 40 grain lead round nose. So here we've got 70 rounds of Winchester hypervelocity 40 grain plated flat point. I'm sorry, that's a hollow point flat nose.
Firing this in a G44 with suppressed, this ammunition in this particular pistol with a short barrel is subsonic.
Alright, this is the Remington Golden Bullet. It's a 40 grain plated round nose. These are the tiny little bulk boxes that you get, 10 boxes to a brick. Real cheap stuff.
And we're going to go gun by gun of what ammunition we shot and what the results were and what the malfunctions were. So we had a total of 7 magazines that we used. That each pistol came with 2, and I bought an additional 3 magazines. Obviously, it's hard doing a larger volume type of a test with just 2 magazines. So we're going to go gun 1, which is this gun here. This particular pistol fired 2,300 rounds. Now, of 100 rounds of the Remington ammunition suppressed, we had 30 malfunctions, all due to underpowered ammunition. Out of a total of 500 rounds that we had shot out of that ammunition, we had issues because of that. And during that test firing, I was able to feel the differences in the powder charges when I would fire the pistol. 20 malfunctions out of 500 of the CC subsonics, all due to under pressure ammunition. Again, if you have a total of 500 rounds and you have 20 malfunctions, that variable is going to be the ammunition. It's not going to be the gun, which, again, we felt we were able to feel those malfunctions because of the lower slide pressure. 9 of the 500 rounds of Remington Thunderbolt bulk. We had 3 short recoils, underpowered cartridge. You could feel it. 1 misfire light strike. This was one of the cartridges where a part of that rim was bad. We were able to put that round back in on another area, fire it, and it was able to fire. We had 3 failures to eject, which were light recoil, underpowered rounds. And we had 2 squib loads, rounds that had no powder in them. 2 of the 500 of the Winchester M22, we had malfunctions, 1 squib and 1 dud. Federal subsonic, 13 of 50, all short strokes related. Total malfunctions for gun 1, 74 out of 2,450 rounds. And it was all ammunition induced. The gun 1, the gun you see here, was cleaned every 500 rounds. This was to ensure that we had no failures to feed. We would have no out of battery issues, and we would have the gun would be reliable. So you're testing the gun, not overuse and trying to give you results out of a filthy gun. Now, gun 2 had fired 2,550 rounds. Okay, let's see. On the Winchester Western Bulk, it had 2 failures out of 410. 1 failure to feed. It was caught in the magazine. Now, this more than likely was a cartridge issue from a little bit of a light recoil and not having enough energy to go forward, but it was caught in the magazine. So we're going to say that could be ammunition related or magazine related, but it's hard to say magazine when we only had a couple of these out of all 5,000 rounds. 2 failures to extract, and that was underpowered ammunition. 1 round of 140 rounds of CCI polymer-coated projectiles. 1 failure to feed, caught in the magazine. Again, that could have been velocity, not having enough energy to strip that off the magazine, or it could have been a magazine issue. But again, considering we've had 5,000 rounds and only a few of these, I highly doubt it was the magazine. Then we had 50 rounds of CCI quiet. This was the one that we had 25 failures. It was because it was unsuppressed. We put a suppressor on it. We had 25 proper without any malfunctions. So he had 30 of 2,550 rounds, which malfunctioned. 3 failures to feed, possibly a magazine, but I have a hard time saying it because we fired 5,000 rounds and only 3 failures to feed. The 26 of those were due to underpowered ammunition and 1 dud. And Brandon was not as generous as I was with cleaning. He cleaned at approximately 2,000 rounds. Brandon started seeing some of the bullets keyhole, so then he decided to clean it, and he pulled out chunks of lead. You see the look on his face, how shocked he was, how much he pulled out of there. So once he cleaned that, accuracy was back up to where it was supposed to be. So now we're going to go through some videos, and we're going to show you various tests of some of the more popular ammunition. Now, this particular video was really interesting because Brandon had the idea, why don't we do a mix of all this different ammunition in 5 magazines? So he took a whole bunch of, as you see in the photo, a whole bunch of different kinds of ammunition that he mixed and matched throughout 5 magazines just to see how the gun would function without it. And you only saw 1 real malfunction, and that was probably a CCI quiet that had a failure to extract. So this shows you that this pistol with properly made ammunition works beautifully. It works as good as anything else that's out there in .22 caliber pistols.
All right, so we've taken 5 rounds out of each of these boxes of ammunition here. All different kinds, high speed, standard, target, bulk pack, and we've mixed them up, loaded 5 mags, and we're going to see how it does just with a random loading out of each magazine. Got a stovepipe there, but it did load the next cartridge. Very different recoil impulses on each of these. That's a fail to feed there. Didn't feed the next cartridge off the magazine. Alrighty, made it through all 50.
My final thoughts. Again, I looked at this test very differently than most. I looked at it from an engineering standpoint. Because as an engineering standpoint, when you see a malfunction, you don't just say, hey, we got a malfunction. We need to find out why. Is it the ammunition causing it, or is it the gun? So every single malfunction we looked at to see what it was. And what we saw was this was ammunition related. It's due to the quality of the .22 long rifle ammunition. There are some ammunitions that are just not suitable to be fired out of a semi-automatic pistol. They just don't have the energy created to cycle an action. So you do have to look at what types of ammunition work properly in your gun. As you see in this Glock, I see it out of the Glock manual, you'll see here that you should find what ammunition works properly out of your pistol and use that. And that's what you should do. You should look at the ammunition and you see which ones you find are the highest quality and which ones are going to work the best. If you're willing to deal with those malfunctions, you can go with the cheap ammunition. Do I have recommendations for you? Well, I'll tell you what. Semi-automatic pistols are designed for high and hypervelocity ammunition. That's what they're designed for. They create enough pressure to operate the guns properly. So my recommendation is to stay away from standard, light, and obviously no CBs or anything along those lines. They're designed to cycle with higher velocity ammunition. Quite frankly, this pistol I am keeping. I'm buying it. And I'm going to be pretty much sticking with CCI Mini-Mags because CCI Mini-Mags work perfect. This gun, out of 600 rounds, did not have one malfunction with the CCI Mini-Mag. There were some other ones as well. We had Winchester the Hyperfire. We had several ones that were designed as ultra high or hyper velocity that worked just fine as well. And I do have quite a bit of Remington Thunderbolt here. I'll use that too because we don't often have malfunctions with it, but we do occasionally. But again, this pistol is as reliable as one can make it. Of a total of 5,000 rounds, we had 104 malfunctions. Of those, 101 were ammunition induced, including short stroke due to underpowered cartridges, which also takes care of the issues that were failures to eject, failure to extract, failure to feed, short stroking, etc. We did have some duds, and we had some squibs. But the malfunctions that we had, with the exception of the CCI Quiet, which was consistently not functioning because it was designed to be a super subsonic load, the ammunition was the issue. So a lot of people who talk about Glock imperfection with this pistol, no, you just have to understand that you can't maintain the reliability with a 22 long rifle you can with a centerfire. It's just not going to happen. If you give a certain type of ammunition with a pistol, it will work to Glock perfection. CCI is a really good example of that. Hypervelocity ammunition is a good example of that. But this is an issue that goes on with every 22 pistol. I have a couple other 22 pistols here. I have a Ruger 2245. I have a GSG, one of their Fireflies, and both of them have the same issues. Certain ammunition will work awesome. Others you have issues. Now, of course, there are some issues with the GSG. It's not nearly as well made a pistol as a Ruger and as this is. But I do believe this pistol will be very, very successful. You will see a lot bought and sold. Some people just because it's Glock, others because of the quality. But the only real complaint that I can give about the gun is the cost. It is certainly probably one of the most expensive pistols out there, especially if you decide to go the suppressed route. Going the suppressed route, you're looking at an additional $160 or so for the suppressed barrel. Now, looking at the results of all the ammunition that we shot, is it really worth going out and spending extra money for subsonic ammunition? No. Everything that we had out there, with the exception of the Stinger, became subsonic in a pistol. So if you find subsonic ammunition being more expensive, it's not worth it. You get any type of ammunition out there, with the exception of Stinger, you've got yourself subsonic ammunition. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As I said, this was from a much different perspective, I think, than a lot of other people did. And I hope you learned a little bit about 22 caliber ammunition, the issues that go along with it, and maybe you can relate to some of it once you really think about it when you're shooting these pistols, and you start feeling some differences in recoil and understanding that that's variations in the powder charge per cartridge, and that has to do a lot with the reliability of any semi-automatic 22, whether it be a pistol or a rifle. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you do, please click like, please subscribe, and even better, share.